So day 14 brings us to the beautiful snow-capped mountains of the Breckenridge Distillery. High up in the Rocky Mountains, this distillery is the world's highest at an elevation of 9,600 feet. At first I was concerned this meant that the angels would get a larger share. I mean, most crimes are crimes of opportunity, and if that distillery is so close to heaven, well, I was worried they wouldn't leave much for us. But don't fear, this is a very high proof, clocking in at 105. So we have the Breckenridge High Proof release here to try on day 14. So after a long day on the slopes, I think we've earned a little treat. Oh, goodness, you would not know this was 105 proof to nose it. Something very dark about it. It isn't quite like a really rich dark chocolate. It's more like you opened up a canister of like illy coffee beans or something, like a really nicely roasted Italian coffee bean. Not a lot of sweetness, just some like dark cherry to go with those notes. Cheers. So that was way sweeter than expected. I don't really get a lot of that sweetness on the nose, but to taste it, you're just awash with this beautiful sweetness, and the sweetness feels very delicate. It's like when you go somewhere and they have like fancy adult cotton candy, right? Like it's not the typical strawberry, grape, green apple flavors. It's something like a little more complex and interesting, but there's that lightness to the sugary smell. As dark as it smelled, I really don't feel like it's that heavy on the palate. There's a real brightness to it. It's almost like the peel of a kumquat without like that bitterness of the actual flesh of the fruit. I will say you certainly taste the high proof once you actually have a sip. So since this is so high proof, I did add a smidge of water just for science. And I do feel like that helped bring out some more of the fruity notes, right? Like you kind of got in the nose of it with the dark cherry. So there's a little bit of the dried fruit that you kind of get on the end. But what's crazy is the sweetness has faded by then, so you're just left with like that sort of dried fruit aftertaste somehow. But like you didn't actually eat the dried fruit, you just somehow have the aftertaste. I almost forgot to mention the vanilla because it's just sort of snuck there in the middle. I was so taken by the just quality of the sugariness, like that fine spun sugar. And then you get the nice vanilla, and then it kind of fades more into the dark fruit. It really does get the saliva going. I don't know if it's that bright, like almost citrusy, but not like too bright in the citrus category. This is really nicely balanced. I'm not typically into bourbons, but I feel like after doing this many days of the advent calendar and it being somewhat bourbon heavy, my curiosity is piqued. Thank you so much for joining me for another nightcap at the Hotel Flaviar Bar, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow night.